What is up, guys? Welcome to the video today. It was an absolutely crazy week. It's the first time I've uploaded 2 videos in one day yesterday, just simply because it was just an action-packed week. All the games were absolutely amazing. The news with AKM and Dallas Fuel came out of nowhere. That was very cool to see, and I'm so hyped, man. We got 2 more weeks left in Stage 1, and then we're going to be able to see some playoff action with the top 4 teams facing off. I'm really hyped to see who the best team at the end of Stage 1 is going to be, the last man standing. But for now, I'm going to give you guys my power rankings and who I think are the best Overwatch League teams right now. So if you're excited to hear my picks and compare, be sure to drop a like on the video, subscribe to my channel, daily Overwatch League content. And real quick, before I get into this, these are just my opinions, guys. This is where I feel the teams stand right now based on the results mainly of last week. Sure, we're going to take into account, weeks prior to that, but mainly what we want to focus on is the most recent games because a lot has changed this week from the one before that. So, let's just get right into it, boys. The number 12th team, we have the Florida Mayhem. Now, I struggled with deciding who was going to be last, either them or the Shanghai Dragons. And simply, I think the Shanghai Dragons put up a better performance this week. They got a map off Seoul. They almost won another one. They looked very improved in that set. And after that, they took 2 games off of Philadelphia Fusion, pushed them to a Game 5 only a day after the Philadelphia Fusion beat the New York Excelsior. And they came close to winning that set as well. Another factor about that set that I really liked was that Shanghai was actually down 0-2. And they persevered through it, and they came back 2-2, which was very nice to see, and I was excited that they were capable of doing that. It shows a sign of strength, as well as that 5-minute hold on Dorado against Seoul, and then a 5-minute hold on last point of Junkertown against the Philadelphia Fusion. Those are great signs, and I'm happy for them, but let's move back down to the Florida Mayhem at number 12. Fortunately for them, they went up against the powerhouse Houston Outlaws, which are just on an absolute tear. Unfortunate, but still, they looked absolutely lifeless in that set. Really, honestly, not showing that they could do much. Yeah, I would have expected Shanghai to put up a better fight than that. So for that reason, I'm going to put them at last. There's not too much more to talk about with these guys. They didn't look that good against Valiant. They were pretty weak. Yeah, they did end up winning the last map, but it was against the Valiant, who don't seem as strong as they did early on in the season, but we'll get into them later. And let's just move on. So that's Florida Mayhem at number 12 and the Shanghai Dragons at number 11. I kind of banged them both out in one go. So let's move on to number 10. Now we have the San Francisco Shock, who they had a shaky week. It was okay. Like, they lost their games. Considering the score lines, it looks worse than it actually was. The games they played were pretty close. First, they went up against the London Spitfire. They got a map, and they were almost able to get that 4th one as well, but they just let it slip away, and London took the set. And then after that, on Friday, they played the Dallas Fuel, which I had a few people comment yesterday in my video saying that it wasn't really that close of a game. Guys, if you actually watched the set, the San Francisco Shock should have been up 2-0 on this set. I don't care what anybody says. San Francisco Shock had big advantages that they needed to pounce on and just win the game, but for some reason, they couldn't handle the pressure, or honestly, I don't even know what happened with the San Francisco Shock. They fell apart in the game against Dallas, that's for sure. First, it was on Eichenwald. They literally had 4 minutes to cap first, and they would have just won the map. They capped first on the very first team fight on their first attack. I just said first like 4 times, Jesus. Anyways, they literally should have capped first no matter what. They had 4 minutes. There was no excuse. They had more than 4 minutes. Yeah, effect popped off at certain points, but you got to win one fight in 4 minutes. They threw that away, and then going into Lunar Horizon Colony, they had a 2.5-minute advantage after both teams attacked and capped. And then again, for some reason, they weren't able to cap first point in 4 minutes. Like, what the hell are they doing? I have no idea. They looked good in that game. After halftime, of course, they fell apart after those 2 devastating losses. That was expected to see. But they looked pretty decent against the Dallas Fuel, who are looking better. And we'll move on to them later. So I guess that's it for the San Francisco Shock. Moving on to number 9, we have the Los Angeles Gladiators, who, to be fair, could be a bit higher and maybe above the next person I'm going to talk about. But I decided to put them at 9 simply because they were winless, and holy crap, they looked so hopeless yesterday. They got destroyed. I expected them to at least be competitive with the Houston Outlaws, like show a sign of life. It honestly looked worse than the beatdown that the Florida Mayhem got against the Houston Outlaws. So that wasn't very exciting. And then against the Los Angeles Valiant in their first game of the week, they let a 2-0 lead slip. And, you know, they did reverse sweep the Philadelphia Fusion the week prior, and then they got reverse swept. You think being in that experience in a week prior and being the ones doing it would have taught them a lesson on, like, not to get reverse swept, but it happened for some reason. They just, I don't know, that Houston game actually really got to me. It really, so I did my best Western teams last week, right? And I put Gladiators pretty high. I thought they were a very good Western team, and I was thinking about putting them, you know, in the talks with Houston and LA Valiant, but just after that game last night, I can't. I really can't. They looked very bad. Maybe it was just a little bump in the road. The bottom, middle of the pack rankings are very hard to decide who is better than who. That's pretty much where I'm going to have to leave it with the LA Gladiators. Moving on to number 8, we have the Dallas Fuel. Now, this is the team that I thought maybe I could put the LA Gladiators above, but because the Gladiators came out winless this week and the Dallas Fuel did not, I figured they were the better performers. And they also had a very close game against the Boston Uprising, who look very strong. So kudos to the Dallas Fuel. They look like they are improving. I like them playing Siegel. Siegel has been playing very good lately. And not just Siegel, Mickey as well has stepped up very, very much. And personally, I've been giving Mickey a hard time in my videos prior to this week. So to see him step up, and as well as Siegel, very awesome. Seems like the Dallas Fuel might have figured out what is going to work for them long term. And if it's at the sake of Taimu not being able to play as much, then so be it, because, you know, they got to do what they got to do, and I respect it. They had a very close game with the Boston Uprising, like I said. Boston Uprising's looking very good. They beat the San Francisco Shock, although it was sort of close in the beginning. They outperformed them. They were the better team by far. Although they are currently 1-5, if they get their stuff together, they can potentially make a push for the playoffs. And I've been saying in multiple videos that I believe they will make the playoffs. So that's it for them. Moving on to number 7, we have the Los Angeles Valiant, who have looked a little off this week. Ever since that loss to the New York Excelsior, where they just got beat down 4-0, they haven't looked as good. I mean, they kind of, I don't want to say they struggled against Florida Mayhem, but Florida Mayhem looked pretty decent against them, and I wouldn't expect that. Especially after seeing how a lot of the other middle of the pack teams have absolutely destroyed the Florida Mayhem. So LA Valiant potentially slipping. Soon and Silk Thread aren't looking as good as they were at the beginning of the regular season or preseason. So they're definitely got some things to go over. I think the silver lining on that team is that Envy is still playing out of his mind. He basically outperforms their DPS in half the games they play now, which is good for him, but not overall. I think the DPS need to put more work in for them. Not too much to be said here. They've just been struggling. And moving on to number 6, we have the Boston Uprising. Now, again, got a little tricky in this area with the upper middle of the pack teams like the Boston Uprising. They did beat the London Spitfire this week, but I still can't put them above the London Spitfire. It was a very close set. I feel like if the London Spitfire had played Profit more than just those last 2 games, they would have came out on top with a 3-1 or 3-2 victory. He's just too valuable to sub out. So for that reason, I think it's a slight hiccup in London's game. I know I said at the beginning I'm going to go mostly based off this week, but again, you got to respect the fact that it is the London Spitfire. They're very talented, and the Boston Uprising are looking very good. I wanted to put them a bit higher, but there's just too many good teams right now. It was very hard to. They beat the Dallas Fuel, although it was close. They still got the job done. 2 3-2 victories this week. They look very strong. Dreamcasper's a beast. Striker's a beast. Note's surprising everybody. So they're really fun to watch. I like the Boston Uprising. I'm becoming a big fan of theirs. Now moving on to the 5th team, which is the Philadelphia Fusion, who also beat a crazy powerhouse Korean team this week, the New York Excelsior. And again, I can't put them higher than New York Excelsior. There's just no way, especially after NYXL beat Seoul Dynasty. You know, they did get the win, but it's just the same situation with the Boston Uprising, guys. You can't put them above NYXL just because they took 1 set off of them this week. I think everybody knows that NYXL long-term has the better team, and just in general, we're probably preparing more for Seoul and look past the Philadelphia Fusion, which they shouldn't have. That's a mistake on their part. I think they'll learn from that, but that Seoul Dynasty game was much more important to them than this one, and I think they would have much rather lost the Philly game and won the Seoul Dynasty game any day. And also, the Philadelphia Fusion did struggle against the Shanghai Dragons at the end of the set. I know they didn't run their original 6, but they still let the Shanghai Dragons get 2 maps, And for that reason, I didn't want to put the Philadelphia Fusion above the next couple teams. Let's go ahead and move on to number 4. We have the London Spitfire, who kind of struggled this week. Definitely the worst performance of their Overwatch League career so far, other than the preseason. I'm not really going to count that, though. Of the regular season, it's their worst performance. They lost a map to the San Francisco Shock and could have lost another one. That was too close of a set for my liking. And then in their next match, we all know they lost to the Boston Uprising. And they don't have the excuse of, overlooking them like the New York Excelsior do to Philly. The only excuse they really have for me is, not running profit. They definitely should have. I don't want to take anything away from Boston. They played out of their minds. It was an amazing set. But again, I got to put them higher. I kind of already explained that. I definitely think they'll be a top 3 team at the end of the stage in the playoffs. And come the end of the regular season, the final playoffs, I feel like they'll be way up there, probably in the finals. So a lot of potential on London Spitfire side. Now moving on to number 3, the Houston Outlaws. I had to put the Houston Outlaws above the London Spitfire just because they have been so dominant. I know they haven't played the best of teams. They beat up on the Gladiators, who I have at 9, and they beat up on Florida, who I have last. But just 4 sets in a row, 2 weeks in a row, utter domination. I mean, they are swamping teams. Straight up just... Oh, it's brutal how they are beating these teams up. They're not even close, guys. They have the biggest stomps of this season so far. Let's take a look at this game against the Los Angeles Gladiators. So yesterday, the Houston Outlaws versus the Gladiators. It was a 4-0 in their favor. The Los Angeles Gladiators only won 10 team fights in 4 maps, guys. 10 team fights, that's it. Out of a total of 42. They only gathered up 63 kills. I mean, just look at these stats. Horrendous. Nobody on their team. Nobody's positive, brutal beatdown. Like, this is one of the worst. And Jake just tearing it up. Cool Matt, 33 and 8. Incredible. These guys worked on them hard. So yeah, as you guys can see, that was not good for the Gladiators. And Houston just looks great, man. I had to put them this high. They're really impressing me. All the praise they're getting from the Korean teams and just teams in general. Custa, he had a clip about him. Yeah, they're looking good. There's no reason for them not to be this high. And moving on to number 2, of course, it's Seoul Dynasty. I couldn't put them at number 1 after their loss. That was probably one of the most epic sets they had against NYXL, though. It was so intense. Literally the battle for the best team in the league right there. Unfortunately for them, they weren't able to come up with it. NYXL was just more clutch. I'll tell you what, though, I cannot wait for the rematch between Seoul and New York. These teams are going to go at it. Seoul, I don't think they were sleeping on New York, but I think they expected to win. And now that they lost, they are pissed. These guys are going into grind mode. The next time they get their hands on New York Excelsior, we are going to see a fired up Seoul Dynasty ready to just go to absolute war. I do not think they are happy about it whatsoever. So that's going to be very exciting to see. And at number 1, like I just said, the New York Excelsior, they put on a hell of a performance against Seoul. Yeah, they lost to the Philadelphia Fusion. They slipped up a bit. It happens. They were focused on the Seoul game. And there's nothing else to say, guys. I think they're number 1. And if you guys disagree with my picks, again, just leave a comment down below. No worries. We all got different opinions. This is where I think the teams stand right now. Obviously, it's going to change up next week again. And if you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to drop a subscription. Daily Overwatch League content. And I'll see you guys later. Peace.